speak to this too. You know, we in the accounting world or tax world, we're very acronym driven, and sometimes it's to our detriment. So what I try to do in my handout is I try to define what the key terms were. So you qualified opportunity zone, qualified opportunity zone fund, qualified opportunity zone property, qualified opportunity zone business, qualified opportunity zone business property. Essentially, you know, the long and short of it is this. What taxpayers have to do is they have to invest, I'll say reinvest, take their capital gain and reinvest it into a qualified opportunity fund. That fund then takes the cash that it has gotten from taxpayers, and then it in turn can directly invest into a business that's in a qualified opportunity zone. And I think on page 2 of my handout, or on the back side I should say of page 1, there's actually a map out there that shows in the entire United States, and obviously you can zoom in on Iowa, where the qualified opportunity zones actually are. So that qualified opportunity fund can either invest directly in a business that's going to be in one of these qualified opportunity zones, or it can invest in a partnership or a corporation that's going to run one of these qualified opportunity zone businesses. The qualified opportunity zone business then has to invest in what is determined to be qualified opportunity zone business property. And there are some specific definitions that I provide in there as far as what qualified opportunity zone business property is. And as was mentioned earlier, you can invest in property that's already in a zone, but that property has to be essentially refurbished. And what you have to spend is basically, let's say you spend $1 million for, let's say, the building, and let's say you allocate $500,000 to the land. In order, you would have to spend $1 million refurbishing that building within 30 months, and that's considered to be a qualified opportunity zone business property. That's inside of a qualified opportunity zone. Obviously there are qualified opportunity zones here in Johnson County. There are different qualified opportunity zones in Lynn County. But the map, like I said, you can zoom in wherever you want to in the U.S. and you can get down pretty much to street level. That will show you where those qualified opportunity zones are.
Yeah, that's a good point, that these opportunity zones are all across the country. I just printed this off this morning. This is, I don't know if you see, but this is a New York City area. And the dark areas are opportunity zones. New York City is surrounded by and includes, lots of these zones. I was at a conference just last week where there were a lot of New York real estate people, and they are super excited about this because they will be able to invest right in their backyards. Getting them interested in Iowa, I think, is going to be a challenge because they've got so much that they can do in their own backyards. But that's what at the Iowa Economic Development Authority, that's what I'm part of the small group there that we're trying to do that. Anyone see any ideas on this? How to attract capital to Iowa opportunity zones, or anyone? Anyway, it's something we definitely want to think about. All right, so if you could buy a parking lot or just buy land, and any improvements that you make on that land will then qualify. Okay, all right. Yeah.
How might opportunity zones work with new market tax credits?
Great question. How opportunity zones interact with new market tax credits and with other sorts of things, like historic tax credits and that sort of thing.
Anyone?
I don't think to be perfectly honest, I don't know that there's been any specific guidance that says if you invest in an opportunity zone, that means you aren't eligible for the additional credits that might be out there. As you mentioned earlier, the regulations that are out right now are just proposed. Will we see anything further in the next, I'll say, month and a half before the end of the year? I kind of doubt it. But will there be? There's obviously going to have to be further regulations, and maybe that's one of the things that they will talk about or discuss. To my knowledge, I don't know that there's been any sort of interplay between the different new markets tax credits or the historical tax credits and how those would would be ineligible or eligible for an investment in a qualified opportunity zone. I just don't think there's any guidance out there yet.
The one thing, that I would agree with you, Mitch. The one thing that I think would be interesting is the historic rehabilitation credits, because one of the way that this works is essentially you have no basis in the property to begin with, and those credits are calculated based upon your basis in the property and your improvement to the property. I don't know how they would work together, because like Mitch said, we don't have regulations, we don't have any rules on it, but there could be some pitfalls that are out there that you have to be aware of, and I think it'd be rather risky to try it at this point in time without further guidance, quite frankly.
We were talking earlier about, and you were mentioning about that the recent regulations give us some guidance on the kinds of gains that are eligible to put in. And in particular, I think a lot of people were wondering about depreciation recapture and whether that's eligible. Anyone want to talk about that?
Essentially, I think Mitch kind of dealt with this to begin with, that, all capital gains qualify for reinvestment, or many capital gains qualify for reinvestment. When we think about capital gains, oftentimes we think about the sale of stock or something of that nature. Well, it also includes the gain on the sale of real estate, to the extent it's something called unrecaptured 1250 gain. And unrecaptured 1250 gain is, it's the 25% portion of gain, so it's the straight line depreciation that's been taken on real property. What wouldn't qualify on the sale of business property would be any ordinary recapture. So this would be accelerated depreciation on real property. Oftentimes it's going to be any equipment that you have, because it's very rare that you buy a piece of equipment for $1,000 and sell it for $1,500. That just isn't that common. But those are the sorts of things that would qualify. And we have RIC and REIT dividends and or capital gain dividends and things of that nature. Anything I've missed?
I think one other thing to point or note out with that is that the character of the gain stays the same when you finally recognize the income. So if you invest short-term capital gain into one of these opportunity zones, when you finally recognize that income, at whatever point that might be, it's going to be short-term capital gain to you. The character stays the same throughout.
Now, there are a number of deadlines and dates in these rules that are a little bit confusing. Some of them said, I think, for budgetary reasons, to make sure that the budgetary impact wasn't greater than what was required, that might be changed. Can anyone sort of walk us through what those are? What has to be done by 2026 and what can happen later?
The principal deadline is December 31, 2026, when the gain that you deferred has to be recognized. You haven't had to recognize it before that. The other primary deadline is 180 days from realization of the gain that you want to defer, that you have to invest it within the Opportunity Zone Fund. In addition to those dates, and I think somebody mentioned before that if the partnership, if you decide to split it out between the partners rather than the partnership doing the deferral, then that 180-day may have a different start point. In addition, dates of sale, there's a 5-year period that if you hold it at least 5 years in the deferred in the Opportunity Investment Fund, that you will get some of your gain exempted from tax, 10%. Go another 2 years, there's another 5% that you get exempted from tax. And then if you have it for over 10 years, any gain on the amount that you've invested, say if you invest $1 million and then you can sell it and get $2 million, and you've held it for 10 years, then you get $1 million free of any tax. I don't know, I can't remember any other significant one.
I might add on to what Dean said. He mentioned the 2026 recognition date, which is absolutely true. And then the 5 years and the 7 years, so you get, you know, the 10% permanent exclusion of the gain if you hold the property for 5 years and 7% if you hold it for, or another 5% if you hold it for 7 years. If you think about those dates, 2026 is the date of recognition. That means in order to get the 10% exclusion, I have to reinvest in the property by the end of 2021. And in order to get the 15% exclusion, I have to reinvest by the end of 2019. So we have the opportunity to utilize these until 2026, but really to receive the full benefit of the qualified opportunities on the statute, you really only have until the end of 2019.
That seems kind of odd when you think about it. I mean, it certainly couldn't have been the intention of the people putting that bill together. So would you expect those deadlines to be extended at some point?
That's a very good question, David. I shouldn't be surprised. You know, there was a point in the regulations where they dealt with the fact that I believe the opportunity zones actually expired in 2026 or 2028 or
8, I think.
yeah. And the Treasury dealt with that by because if you think about it, the property has to be in a qualified opportunity zone for at least 10 years to qualify for the 100% exclusion. So that would have limited the really usefulness of the statute. And the Treasury expanded that to say that the opportunity zones exist until 2048 or something of that nature. So we didn't have a lot of people that were selling property at one point in time. This might be something that's dealt with through regulations. I'm not so sure that they'll be able to because it's included in the statute. So it might be something that Congress would have to deal with. You know, we've got a lot of things like this with the tax reform package that was passed because it was passed so quickly. That there are a lot of things like this that just weren't dealt with.
Yeah. Now, this program does seem to have a lot of bipartisan support. So even though we may be in a difficult political environment for the next couple of years, there may be support for getting some fixes out on this. For example, the co-sponsors of this were Senator Scott from South Carolina, a Republican, and also Cory Booker from New Jersey. Gives you an idea of the people who can't cooperate on a lot of things, but we're interested in cooperating on this. Now, investments in an opportunity zone can be in real estate investments. They can also be in businesses that are located in the opportunity zones. Anyone want to comment on, how likely it is that investments will go into businesses versus real estate, or what some of the difficulties might be in going into businesses?
Well, the one thing that kind of, in order for it to be considered qualified opportunity zone business property, is the fact that the property itself has to be acquired after December 31st of 2017. So while I think it's possible that you could invest in an existing business that's already in an opportunity zone, I guess because of the fact that the property itself has to be purchased after December 31st of 2017, I guess in my mind I'm thinking it's going to be much more used with investors. We were talking about it earlier. It just makes more sense, at least off the cuff, that investors are going to be investing in real estate and refurbishing that real estate rather than investing in a business that's already there, because in order for the property to qualify, you have to buy it after December 31st of 2017. So there may not be as many opportunities to invest in an already existing business versus purchasing real estate that's already there and doing something with that.
I think the other complicating factor is, we've referred to this 30-month period where within 30 months you have to have the building substantially renovated or something of that nature. The reason that 30-month period is important is because of the working capital safe harbor that's included in the regulations. So if I have cash on my balance sheet, that cash is a non-qualified asset unless I meet this working capital safe harbor. There's also a provision in there, if I remember correctly, that states that working capital safe harbor only applies in cases where I'm investing in or substantially renovating tangible property. And because of that, it seems like it could be hard to even invest in a brand new business that's in a qualified opportunity zone, because I'm putting cash into the business, which is considered an asset for the purpose of that 90% test, and I don't have that qualified working capital safe harbor that I do in the real estate context, or the case where I've got a very capital intensive business. But I could be wrong there too. It's a week and a half old worth of regulations, so.
I think that's a really important point, and it may, because I get questions from people occasionally about, intellectual property centered businesses. Hey, can we just locate that out in, Towncrest and qualify? But from what you're saying, it sounds like that might be a difficult thing to do.
At least based upon an initial reading of the regulations, and we have to remember these regulations aren't final; they're in proposed form, which means there's still a comment period that's out there, and a lot of accounting firms and other people will be at a hearing to bring up topics like this, because I don't think at the end of the day this was the intention of the statute.
Again, questions? Anyone? Yes.
Are there penalties identified if you don't meet deadlines then? Is that pretty clearly in the legislation?
Great question. Penalties? Have penalties been defined for failure to meet these deadlines or requirements?
Go ahead.
What I was going to say is the one penalty that I'm aware of, and I don't know how much it is for the failure to meet the definition of a qualified opportunity fund. So that 90% test has to be met on an every 6-month basis. If you have a period of time where you don't meet that test, at least today, it doesn't disqualify you as a qualified opportunity fund, but it does cause penalties for the fund.
There's still a lot of gray area in the regulations where they'll say substantially comply, using those kinds of phrases. So we're hoping that the next round of regulations come out much more firm when it comes to penalties and substantial compliance. But right now there's still a lot of gray area when it comes to penalties and compliance.
Yeah, I think one example of clarification that we got was that there was the phrase substantially all, and I think somebody wanted to say that substantially all was defined to be 70%, right? And that was the fraction of your tangible assets that had to be in the opportunity zone. So the statute itself said that substantially all of them have to be, and then Treasury defined that to be 70%. Do I have that right? Okay. So a lot of these other things that are, we don't know exactly how they're going to define that statute that will come out later. Okay. Yeah.
What about gains from foreign investment or foreign business, as far as repatriated capital? Is that considered a gain?
I have no idea. Anyone? If you have gains on foreign investments, can those go into opportunity zones?
I've seen nothing in the regulations that would say foreign gains excluded, but that's a good question. I'm not entirely sure on that one.
The one issue that you may run into is there's a recapture provision within the rules for sales of foreign stock, which could treat a portion of that gain as ordinary income, and that portion would not qualify.
Interesting.
One question. So an opportunity fund is basically an LLC, right? You create your own LLC, is that what it is, or something?
It can also be a C Corp or a partnership.
Okay, but let's say I have my own, right? I create my own fund. Can I invest, and I'm 20% of the deal, can the other 80% people be in there non-qualified, right? Okay, that's question mark. So then in that ownership that I have, after the 10-year waiting period, right? Let's say those guys they want to tax-free the property out because they don't want to pay taxes on it. You have the right to sell my partnership units instead of selling the property and get the same tax exempt status by selling my units.
Great question.
I think the answer is yes, because I think what it talks about in terms of the 10-year for the deferral is obviously the gain that you invested, but what it talks about is the taxpayer's investment in the fund itself. So if one of your other partners wants to purchase or you sell your interest in the fund, I believe that would still, and if you're beyond that 10-year window, then I think that in and of itself would make it so that you could have the full deferral if you would be out of the LLC or out of the partnership, someone else or the partnership itself would buy your interest in the fund, that would be eligible for the deferral, and then if the remaining partners wanted to do the 1031, I think that's possible to do so.
Can you, not to make you repeat that, but it's hard to hear the question.
Oh,
You reiterate each question before you.
Okay, yeah, so here, we can do it. Yeah.
Basically, it was if I want to create my own fund and I'm a 20% owner in the deal with four other guys, that if I put my money in a tax-free situation under this create my own fund, those guys come in with non-fund sources, and then if I want to go ahead and wait a 10-year period, number one, does that qualify that I could just defer my taxes? And then the other thing would be is if at the end of 10 years, those guys, for whatever reason, don't want to sell and I want to cash out, I could sell my ownership, my units in the partnership and then have the tax deferral, or I guess it'd be tax-free at the time.
Thanks.
The one thing I might add to that is I believe on that sale as well as the acquisition of the property, there's a rule that you can't sell to a related party. So that's what we have to be careful of, and I think it's if I remember correctly, it doesn't bring the 50% down to 20%. So your 20% might be a magic number that screws you up.
And I can run this mic out to anyone else who has questions. Anyone else out there? Yeah.
This one's coming from Mitch. You mentioned about there's a good map out there, a national map. And I'm just curious where that's at. And then secondly, all along that lines, beyond coming to something like this to try to learn, what are some resources like groups that are the driving force of this that we should use to learn more beyond this?
I guess I'll answer the first question, and I saw Dean threw his hand up, so maybe he can answer the second one. But on the back page of the first page of the handout, underneath QOZP, which stands for Qualified Opportunity Zone Property, there's a website there that links to what the map is. I think there's a couple of parameters you have to set once you go into the map itself, but then once you set the parameters correctly, you can drill down, like I said before, you can drill down to basically street level. I live in Hiawatha, so I'm from the Cedar Rapids office of Bergen KDV. You can drill down, it's pretty much, you can see, street level as far as where the opportunity zones are themselves. As far as resources to follow in terms of these, I don't think the IRS has anything on there. Do they have a frequently asked questions? I don't know that they do. I know with a lot of this type of stuff, once the regulations are proposed, they do try to put like an FAQ out there. Any other?
The IRS does have a frequently asked questions, but it's not very informative. At this stage yet, they're pretty generic questions. There is an organization called the Council for Finance Development Agencies, or CDFA, that is, I think, headquartered in Ohio and is hugely involved in anything economic development. You read about TIFs on their webpage. They have a whole area on opportunity zones, and you can see information and what people are writing through that resource. So it's cdfa.org, the Council of Finance Development Agencies.
The one thing I might add to that, not to put a plug in for RSM, but we also have a presentation, a webcast on October 26th. If you go to our website, that should be a pretty informative presentation.
think I saw a couple of other hands up there. Anyone? Question? All right. Is there some guidance on how assets are valued in these? So like a lot of these tests for, certain percentages of things, are the assets always valued at market value, or are there other ways? Anyone have any ideas on that?
So for purposes of the 90% test, we're going to look at the balance sheet, or say financial statement, 10K or some sort of financial statement to the fair market value of the assets. That's pretty much all we've seen so far. I think otherwise we're just looking at the cost value of the assets as well, if there isn't a balance sheet or not a financial statement. But as of right now, that's what you're going to look at for valuation.
One last thing, do you see any potential for abuse in this, or any directions that people are, trying to push the rules, and where we'll see the IRS pushing back? Anyone seen anything like that, or? I guess that's good if no one has an answer. All right. Any more?
Yeah, sure. There's no more questions.
If anyone else have any other questions? All right.
Thank you.
Sure.
So just a couple notes. ICAD and the Chamber, we are a CDFA member, so if you get on that CDFA website and there's a document you want to open, and sometimes you can see the document but you can't open it, let us know, we can get you that document. And we'll continue to push information out as it becomes available. The other thing I think to note, we should have brought the maps. The first time we did this, we brought the maps, but in Iowa City, kind of think riverfront crossings, so Big Grove area, down Highway 6, all the way to Scott Boulevard. Scott Boulevard is the eastern border, up to kind of the Town Crest area around Sycamore. One thing we've talked about with Kirkwood Community College, if you're looking for project ideas, they would love some student housing around the Iowa City campus. So the City of Iowa City is working with Mid-American Energy to move that service center out to the industrial park, so there'll be some land there. But if you have land or you know landowners around that area, that's a big need for Kirkwood. They're trying to grow that campus, but access to housing has always been a challenge in that area. And then Kelly, do you want to talk about some of the things you'd like to see in Corville, some of the areas, and the kind of projects that you hope maybe people are moving forward?
Just a quick, those are the zones that we have here in Johnson County.
So in Corville, figure everything south of 80 from the river to the mall, right? That kind of pie shape, and then the southern border, is it the railroad?
Yeah.
Okay. So
No, no.
if you were playing Sim City with their money, what would you want to build?
Yeah, there's a couple of areas that are natural, but as Mark said, everything from the Iowa River over to Coleridge Mall. Obviously, the Iowa River Landing is eligible. There's a lot of projects that we're looking at doing in there. The redevelopment of the area behind Walgreens on Highway 6 from First Avenue all the way to Clear Creek, there's about 30 acres there. That's an area that the council has significant interest in redevelopment of that area. Also, Coleridge Mall has some interest in some things that they're doing out in their immediate area as well. So those are just three areas, and then I think there's several housing opportunities throughout that area from the river out to Coleridge Mall.
One of the things, so when I started with ICAD back in 2007, one of the first assignments I was given was to help get Peterson Iron and Metal out of where they're at in Corville so you could redevelop that. About 3 years ago, I gave that project to Tom. We still haven't quite figured that out. But yeah, so that whole area, I think, behind Walgreens could be, if you think about all the opportunities there, kind of that gateway to the university and everything. So Wendy Ford is here. Wendy's back there. If you have questions about sites in Iowa City, or want to talk to anything, Wendy is your resource there in Iowa City. So does anyone have a project right now that you would like to just kind of put before people that you're looking for additional investment in? Yeah, you figured it out. If you have something, this is one of those things, because of the timing of this, we've got a year to figure this out. This is the time to try to find some new partnerships and try to collaborate in different ways. So if you've got a project that you're working on that you're trying to attract capital to, let us know, let the chamber know. We can push it out to the other folks and try to help find other folks that might be sitting on capital gains that need to do something with that money over the next year to take advantage of this program. So with that, I want to thank all of you for joining this panel on short notice. I know the rules just came out. They'll continue to evolve. We appreciate you being here. David, thank you for joining us this morning. This area, there's a lot of great things going on. As we go into Thanksgiving, there's a lot of things we can be thankful for. There's a lot of issues in our community we still have to work on together. So let's hope this is one way to address some of those things, maybe create some affordable housing, do some innovative things to attract more business, more investment in our area. So thank you all for being here. Hopefully you signed up on that sheet. We'll continue to push information out to you. With that, have a great weekend and have a great Thanksgiving.